Track 5. The Missing Link. Increasing your sports performance at any age. It was May 2002, and I was in Mobile, Alabama. And as a faculty member of the United States Sports Academy, I was attending graduation ceremonies where a fellow named Roel Bradstock was being awarded Sports Artist of the Year. After being introduced, I asked him how he got interested in sports art. Roel simply said he used to be a jock. A jock indeed. Roel Bradstock was a two-time Olympian, and in 1986, Roel set the world record in the javelin. Although he still loved and longed for athletic competition, now his focus was on his artwork. But I could still see the passion and fire in his eyes as we spoke about competing. So I asked him about this. He said, "Doc, it's very hard to compete when you're old and bald like I am. Past 40, with the typical history of injuries and subsequent degenerative joint changes seen with well-weathered athletes, I certainly understood. But I knew I could help him. So despite our caps and gowns and the awkwardness of the occasion, I asked him right then and there to take off his shoes and socks, roll up his pants, and walk for me. Then I laid a bombshell on him, and I said, Roel, it's not your age that's limiting you, but your structural problems. Like most true champions, he refused to believe his great body could possibly have structural imperfections. To him, his world record was proof positive he was indeed structurally sound. He was convinced that age and age alone was what was preventing him from reaching his glory again. I told him that I obviously wasn't good enough to make him young again, but that I could make him better structurally than he was in his prime, and that I thought that would give him the edge he needed, the edge he was looking for, the edge that age had sadly taken away. He laughed in disbelief, but decided he would give it a go. Well, let me tell you what happened. In 2004, Roel Bradstock qualified for the Olympic trials. He was the oldest man to ever do so in his event. And if he had not had viral meningitis just a few weeks before, there's just no telling what he would have accomplished. In April 2006, while wearing what he calls his special magic throwing boots because of the custom inserts I specifically designed for him, Roel Bradstock broke the American record for his age, and he did this not once, but 4 times, and had his longest throw in 2 years. And at that very same meet, he did something really remarkable. He made the USA top 10, not in the Masters, but in any age group. Yes, Roel Bradstock was 42 years old, and was now one of the top 10 javelin throwers in the entire United States. And the oldest guy he competed against that day was 21 years old. Recently, he told me he felt stronger and was throwing better than he ever had. So just what was it that made Roel Bradstock feel as if he had perhaps found his fountain of youth once again? Why, as he says, did he feel quicker, more balanced, and have greater power from his base with which to compete? On track 6, I'll describe exactly what we do for world champions like Roel, as well as for weekend warriors or for those with arthritis. But for now, suffice to say that contrary to current thinking, age doesn't have to mean decreased performance. As a matter of fact, my work has shown that through structural analysis, you can actually improve performance as you age. Pretty exciting. So whether you're an aging champion like Roel Bradstock, still longing for competition, a younger Olympian like Terence Trammell, who just after seeing us ran a personal best and won a silver medal in the 2004 Olympic Games, or someone who simply wishes to stay active as you age with arthritis, you too may be able to experience exciting results through structural analysis. And that's because the process is the same for everyone, a process that allows me to find your individual structural problems and correct them by optimally positioning your feet, the foundation of your entire skeletal system. And although there are certainly many things needed to perform well in sports, including natural ability, strength, flexibility, good coaching and training, proper nutrition and determination, structural analysis is indeed one of the most important and also the most neglected. As a matter of fact, I don't know of anything else that can create as powerful and as immediate an improvement in sports performance as the ideal positioning of your feet. Now let's look at why this is true. Every sport begins and ends with the foot. Roel will be the first to tell you that throwing the javelin begins with the very tips of his toes. The famed Atlanta Falcon quarterback Steve Bartkowski says that throwing a good pass all starts with the feet. And the great Sam Snead said that while all good golf begins at the waist, all great golf begins at the foot. Why, even a swimming meet can be won or lost by the time it takes to jump off the side of the pool, and that starts with proper foot positioning. The feet are the tires on our race car, and no race car can run at its optimal speed without wheels and tires that are properly aligned and balanced. So contrary to popular belief, and as radical as it may initially sound, go ahead, tar and feather me if you like, but I don't believe that performing well in any sport should begin by taking lessons, getting in shape, or buying a new tennis racket, or a set of golf clubs for that matter. But if you really want to perform well in sports, begin instead with structural analysis. Fix yourself first. It's interesting, Sports Illustrated published an article about 2 years ago addressing this very issue. It seemed as though many top players were being injured during training, and no one understood why. That's because even pro athletes are not generally fully evaluated from a structural point of view. They just begin training. And when injuries develop, they're assumed to always be sports-related and not structural. Now, certainly no one can deny the tremendous bodily abuse pro football players face with each and every play. But I see many of the same non-impact overuse syndromes in people who have never played a single game of football in their life. My premise regarding structural analysis is really very simple. First, no one is born structurally perfect. Everyone has some degree of abnormality. For example, most of the population has abnormal pronation or a flattening of their feet. And since we're not perfect, everyone also has one leg that's longer or shorter than the other. Look in the mirror, and you'll most likely see that one foot is flatter than the other, one shoulder is higher, or one arm is lower. That's because not even our right and left sides are mirror images of each other. Why, nothing about us is perfect, and that certainly includes our structure. Second, any degree of abnormality decreases performance in sports and increases the risks of injury. And these structural problems can also later cause the painful, destructive changes in our joints, consistent with what we call osteoarthritis. As I mentioned on Track 4, the section on arthritis, if you rub two rocks together long enough or even run water over a rock long enough, we said its shape would change. And those changes will be most evident where there was the greatest amount of friction and pressure. Well, our joints are no different. They react the very same way. But on the other hand, optimally controlling abnormal structure and function decreases joint stress and can improve painful symptoms. This occurs in the same way that balancing and aligning the tires on your car gives it a better ride and helps those tires last longer. The importance of this cannot be overemphasized. So how do structural problems specifically impact sports performance? Well, one of the most important things in any sport, as you probably know, is speed. Almost all sports require speed. Without speed, you can't succeed in track or field, football, baseball, basketball, or most any other sport. Well, one of the most common performance-robbing factors is a flattened foot. Usually thought to be no big deal, pronation or a flattening of the foot has a profound influence on speed. You see, the ideal foot should hit the ground on its outer side and then roll inward to a critical point we call subtalar neutral. At this point, the foot is ideally positioned to maximally support the leg, hip, and back. And from this point, the foot then acts as a rigid lever propelling you to your next stride. Well, on a flattened foot, the foot doesn't stop at this critical point, but continues to roll in, with the arch flattening and collapsing, and thus staying on the ground far too long. This greatly impacts an athlete's speed, because the longer the foot is on the ground, the slower you will run. To give you an idea of how this theoretical medical science works in the real world, think about this. A blink is 1/1000th of a second. Well, decreasing the time the foot is on the ground by only 5/1000ths of a second each stride, a fraction of the time of a blink, can decrease a 40-yard dash time from 4.8 to 4.6 seconds or less. That can make the difference in making the NFL. This is precisely why sprinters use a starting block and work meticulously in setting it up, to ideally position their feet for maximum push-off. And because a flattened foot is not a rigid lever, not only is straight line performance affected, but side-to-side speed as well.